Hi, sweeties. How are you doing? Welcome to Naya Sim, and thank you all so much for all the love and support. Hope you all are doing great. So, this apology video, a lot of people were saying that they are not accepting it because it was not directed at Black women or something. But then, apology has been given out, and he actually made the first apology, which a lot of people were bashing him for. Because he wasn't like being direct or trying to feeling remorseful over what he did, and then he made another video saying that he really messed up and he know that that he messed up. And I am going to say this: if you are going to do an apology video and people have to force you or tell you that this is not good enough, it means that you know what you are doing. And I love the fact that sometimes all these our allies, or what do they call themselves, sleep, because most times when people sleep, that is when you know what it's in their mind and all that. So this is another great reason for us to know that some of them are not even rooting for us, because some of them, the only thing, or the only like the only thing that they are recognizing is the Holocaust that happened, right? And forgetting that every genocide or whatever happened or experience that happened to people happened to them with different experiences and all that. I know his anti-blackness is showing. He refused to acknowledge how horrifying slave trade was. But you know what? Let's get into this.
A lot of my fans still don't think I did anything wrong, which I think is interesting because not only have I acknowledged that I fucked up, but in acknowledging that I fucked up, I also fucked up. Like, I've been rewatching the apology that I uploaded yesterday, and a lot of it is just bad. There's a lot of things that people are rightfully hurt and upset at me for that I just kind of glossed over. Like, why didn't I acknowledge that I minimized the transatlantic slave trade by implying it wasn't as bad because it happened over a longer period? Why didn't I apologize for conflating the Western world with the whole world? Talk about the implications of what it means when I said other genocides happened in far-off corners of the world. How dangerous it could have been to frame the Holocaust as uniquely horrific when every genocide is uniquely horrific in some way. Like, why was it so easy for me to directly call out Madison's actions as enabling anti-Semitism, but not my own for enabling racism, and instead just said that they were weird? And why could I not see this until it was pointed out to me? I've mentioned that a lot of the issues in my first video are a byproduct of the fact that I was immediately triggered and then responded out of emotion when I shouldn't have, but then I had an entire day to calm down and think things through and not respond emotionally, and I did it again. Like, part of that was probably that it was too soon, and even though I didn't realize it, I was still sitting in that exact same headspace, which is why I felt such a strong need to clarify the exact same point. But a huge part of this was probably an immediate instinct to take advantage of my own privilege and not sit in discomfort. Like, I have sat in discomfort plenty of times in my life. I'd like to think that's how I've gotten to the person I am now, but this is the first time I've had to do it publicly, and so my gut instinct was not to. So I'm sorry for the initial harm I caused, the anti-black rhetoric, the lack of real accountability, and doubling down when I did not need to. I've seen a bunch of comments and messages from people saying things like, "Oh my God, Yuval, I understood you the entire time. You were being perfectly clear." It's like, okay, I'm glad you did. But objectively, my words were harmful to a lot of people. I hope this is also an example to others, because I know quite a few people are particularly upset because of who I am. Right? I'm not just the linguistics guy. If you look at a lot of my linguistic videos, you'll notice that a bunch of them are not really about linguistics. They're about how people use language to reinforce classism and racism. I talk about that constantly. A lot of people in my comments have been recommending that I read Caste by Isabel Wilkerson. I've actually already read Caste. It's a great book. I featured it in 2 of my videos. And still, it is from me from which all this came. White people in particular, in our activism, we need to remember that that is not enough to truly unlearn everything. Some blind spots are very, very deep. There are probably still things in this video that I missed or forgot to say, but I am still trying to find them. I am, in like a weird way, thankful that this happened to me because it's opened up a very good discourse in which I have learned quite a bit. I'm gonna tag 2 creators who responded to me with videos that I thought were particularly helpful. That would be thedownballot.org and Pe0ple. I would like to thank the both of you for responding in a way that was very respectful and informational, because you were responding to a video that wasn't. And most of the videos I've seen have been very helpful and respectful, other than, like the memes. I'm not responding to Madison or messaging her directly because towards the end of her last video, She said she did not want to continue a back and forth, so I'm assuming she does not want that. I'm not exactly sure what to do with my last video. You know, I want to make sure I take accountability, but I also worry that if I don't take it down, I'll spread more misinformation and hate, because a lot of the issues that were in my first video have been pointed out to me or in my second. In case I do take it down, I want to be clear. I'm, of course, still incredibly sorry for the amount of hate that I caused Madison by using very aggressive and hateful rhetoric, even if I didn't realize it at the time. All of this has made me think I should revisit how I use this platform, because I'm really disappointed in myself for the things I said and the harm I caused, and I don't ever want to do that again. Also, if you're white and you're about to say, apology accepted, Yuval, don't. Like, I didn't do anything to you. No one has to accept my apology, right? Like, what I'm going to do is going to be the same regardless. But, like, you especially, like, the fuck? I've seen a lot of people recommend Holocaust Industry by Norman Finkelstein. I do like reading, particularly nonfiction. So if you have any other book recommendations, feel free to leave them in the comments. At the very least, this can be a nice learning opportunity for everybody. So yeah, I really am sorry. I know this is all on me. I hope this acknowledges everything in a way that's more appropriate and doesn't cause the same harm. But if it does, I'm always appreciative of the feedback. So thank you. So if you have any other book recommendations, feel free to leave them in the comments.
Hey y'all, appreciate the tag. Yes, I did make some book recommendations in regards to this whole Yuval situation. One of the books I recommended was specific to a core issue that I found was the inability to listen to Black women when we speak, whether subconsciously or with intent, trying to pretend like you know the fuck it is that we saying. But anyways, the book that I recommended to help with that was Daughters of Africa. Now this is an international anthology of the words and writings of women of African descent. This is Black women on the continent, throughout the diaspora. This is Black women, I'm talking in Ethiopia, Egypt, South Africa, Liberia, Black women in the Americas, Philadelphia, Georgia, Black women in the Caribbean islands, Jamaica, the Black women diaspora. This whole book has their direct words and writings from their voices directly to train your ears so you can learn how we speak. And these words that are written in here are written uninterrupted at that, without threat of being silenced, because I honestly feel like this is what this is all about. Is I don't like what you're saying. It's threatening my level of privilege in some way, and people do have privilege within oppression. Can we clock that T? Can we clock that T? Okay, you're threatening my privilege in whatever position that is, and I don't like that, so I need you to be silenced. And this will train other people, because I don't give a fuck what this white man got to say. This will train other people to listen to our voices, so when somebody comes and tries to misrepresent what the fuck it is that we're saying, you'll be able to recognize that shit. And as far as this apology goes, I'm not too sure who it's supposed to be for. Maybe it's directly to somebody, or I don't know, maybe it's for Black women. But as a Black woman, I don't accept apologies from white men unless they're in dividends. So unless this wants to send me his portfolio so we can link like that, he could take this apology and shove it, okay? But it's S, okay? And I don't have any other correction or anything for him specifically, because this individual has already indicated in this video that he appreciates responses that were respectful, even though he was disrespectful. And y'all already know that's not how I roll. You know, that's not how I roll. If you get disrespectful, I'm gonna disrespect you right the fuck back. I don't know. I don't give grace for people to play in my fucking face. I don't do that, because then they'll continue to do that shit, okay? So maybe if he can learn to deconstruct and speak with respect, and he can go and learn to talk with respect, and then he can be warranted that respect back, especially if you're speaking not observation of my full humanity and dehumanizing me to uncivilized dark corners of the globe. Referencing where I'm coming from is uncivilized, the dark corners of the globe. That level of racism, that has nothing to do with tone. It has nothing to do with tone. That is an anti-Black racist ideology, white supremacist ideology that is deeply rooted somewhere to come out like that. Okay, so I know. So no, when you talk like that, you don't get respect. I give education how you enter the class. So if you enter the class with some trash, I'ma just tell you to kick ass. Okay, you can take the education how I give it, because you came in here with some bullshit. You came in here on some fuck shit. Okay, but like I said, there's no discussion to be had with somebody who is committed to misunderstanding you, especially if they don't even view your full humanity in that discussion. You see. But anyways, like I said, a recommendation to learn to listen to how Black women speak and listen to our voices is the Daughters of Africa, an international anthology of our words and writings across the globe spanning decades. And for all the intellectuals that are giving education, however it's given, if it's not taken, that's not up to you, that's up to them, especially if they're coming with some disrespect, especially if they're coming with acknowledged disrespect, while opening the mouth and saying, I appreciate you respecting me after I disrespected you. That's the type of grace I can't give. And that specifically is why I don't give grace. It's why I don't give grace for people to play in my fucking face. Okay? Enjoy your reading, and y'all have a great day. Have a nice day.
I saw that Black Creator's video about how we teach the Holocaust, and I do think Yuval's stitch was disingenuous. Because immediately after I saw that Black Creator speaking, I knew exactly what they meant. We have to remember that the United States educational system will never, ever teach us anything that they cannot personally benefit from down the line, particularly when it comes to history and our collective historical memory. This is why a lot of people who are outside of marginalized communities say that post-secondary education is where they've learned the most about American history, not through the lens of the K through 12 educational system, but rather it's even depending on the professor or the school that you go to, but rather they have expanded their knowledge about marginalization and the histories that have led us here to where we are today. It's for that reason that Republicans want to refer to chattel slavery as forced migration or indentured servitude. It is for this reason that our educational textbooks, the things that we want to give to our children, the next generation, are constantly battlegrounds for the truth. And that's exactly what that person was talking about. So from the eyes of the U.S. educational system, how would it service the U.S. government? How would it service U.S. interests to teach about King Leopold? To teach about the very stark realities of the transatlantic slave trade? Even when we talk about the civil rights movement, a lot of things are simply brushed over in service of promoting nonviolence over any other form of action. What purpose does that serve? We cannot just imbibe historical texts, especially that is handed to us by local and state governments in the form of curriculum requirements, right? And not ask, why is this the version of history that we are taught? And to say that the horrors of the Holocaust were unique because of Germany being a civilized society completely eradicates the fact that that civilized society is something that marginalized people have never experienced from European entities. Which is why people ask, like the academic conversation that was being had, why aren't the atrocities that were experienced by the Congolese held up to the exact same light? And for me, in my opinion, it's because it didn't serve a purpose for Western entities to do so.
I have been following the Yuval thing closer than I should have, and here's what I have to add. Not too long ago, I went on a walk with an older family member, and he made a racist comment about it's a shame how people want to remove statues. I said, do you mean statues of slaveholders? He said, yeah. He said, even if it's the past, it's part of who we are, and we shouldn't be removing it. I immediately asked him, would you feel comfortable having a statue of Adolf Hitler in our public spaces? And he said, of course not. He did horrible things. There's no way I would allow that to happen. And the Holocaust had extreme levels of atrocities that could fill libraries. These atrocities were in large part outcroppings of white supremacy, involved dehumanization, stigmatization, unequal civil rights, forced displacement, violence against property, extreme torture, murder, extermination. All things that people of color have suffered on a massive scale for millennia at the hands of white supremacy and imperialism. Yuval was immediately activated when he felt that the horror of the Holocaust wasn't accurately depicted, not realizing the irony of the way that he was saying that. Even if Holocaust education is not what it needs to be in the United States, it has entered the mainstream consciousness enough that lots of people, including my conservative older relatives, recognize the seriousness of that event in a way that they don't do for people of color that they interact with every day. I think ignoring that fact, I do have distaste for that. I think that kind of thinking at the extreme results in a country where the majority of people can express dismay and horror at the events of 80 years ago, but not seem to muster an ounce of abject horror at children being melted by bombs right now, living children right now, having that happen to them.
They just said the quiet part out loud, and I love it. This right here is facts. It is so effing weird that white people think that they are the epicenter of freedom. Like, why? Why do white people think that they're the epicenter of freedom? And they have the right to give freedom to brown people across a world. Like, we all know that America and the Western Empire is not spreading freedom. They're spreading colonization, genocide, and white supremacist Christian nationalism and Zionism worldwide. But what gives them the right to dictate what freedom is? Again, dictate and act like dictators and overthrow democratically elected officials. like Thomas Sankara and Lumumba and every Haitian and communist leader ever. They just said the quiet part out loud, and I love it. This right here.
This is so freaking real, because as someone who's, again, will reiterate, worked in social justice and, again, talked about slavery and systemic racism for a couple years at a museum, I would hear all the time of white men saying, well, we gave black people rights. And it would always, like, dumbfound me, because it's like, well, you didn't give it to us. First of all, we had to fight for it. It wasn't like white men got together and were like, hey, let's have the black people live equally amongst us. It was a fight the entire time. And the other part of it is, the whole thing of celebrating America as the freest country in the world is the founding fathers saying that these rights are inalienable. I'm sorry if I'm not saying it correctly, but these are inalienable rights that are given by God. They're not given by a white man. They're not given by a president. They are inalienable. They belong to all of us as human beings. It's one of the core tenets of human rights the human rights discourse that has developed after the Holocaust. That, again, it doesn't matter what country you're in. It doesn't matter what your race is, your ethnicity is, your nationality is, your sexual orientation is, your disability is, your gender is, your education level is. There is a certain fundamental foundation that is bestowed to all human beings just for the mere fact of being human being, nothing else. And so it always irked me when white people would say, well, we gave black people their rights. It always rubbed me the wrong way. And I didn't know how to, like, process it or how to, like, respond back to it. But check out, again, the original comment that I stitched, that, like, yes, that some people view the white race as the masters of races, and they are the ones that can give rights to others, and they are the ones that can take it away. So that whole Constitution, Bill of Rights, inalienable rights bestowed by God, apparently only applies to white people. Everybody else has to earn it, or it has to be given to us by the white man.
Just that it happened within a civilized society or a modern world. But Germany specifically was seen as the peak of civilization globally. They led the world in classical music, in scientific discoveries, in industry. They were seen to have some of the greatest philosophers and thinkers of the world. And it is from there that all of this happened. And so part of the reason that we regard the Holocaust so severely is because of the global reckoning that followed, that society was not enough, that even the highest forms of sophistication and education was not enough to stop millions of people within the span of just a few years, right? 1933 to 1941, the start of the Holocaust, just 8 years. And within that short time frame, this wasn't enough to stop millions of people from turning into monsters.
Yuval, your video literally falls into the trap of genocide exceptionalism that people are saying is given to the Holocaust. I think a lot more people would have agreed with you if you hadn't added this part in. Disclaimer before I begin, we are on the same side, and I will block you if I see any Holocaust denialism in the comments, or anti-Semitism, or anti-Blackness for that matter. Germany was already doing a lot of pillaging in Africa and Asia, so this idea that people suddenly turned into monsters within 4 years is not true. Germany, being known for sophistication and education and Enlightenment thinking whilst pillaging African lands, is exactly what we're talking about. Why was that not seen as an indictment when it was happening years and years and years before the Holocaust? I've talked about how Nazi officials were literally inspired by the tactics used against the Nama and the Herero people in the genocide in Namibia that took place from 1904 to 1909, and the person, General Trotha, who was doing it, had used those same tactics to quell the Boxer Rebellion a few years before that. These tactics were very industrialized and systematic, so again, why was that not seen as an indictment on the German society? The way you're presenting it here is that suddenly Germans became these racists within a few short years, when that is not the case at all.
People could not explain this away by saying that it happened in some far-off corner of the world contained to a single country, or that it happened just as a result of one group severely overpowering another, or that it was just barbarism and savagery, because it wasn't. This was heavily organized, systematic, and it happened across a continent of global superpowers. And I think what's particularly difficult for people to wrap their heads around is that Hitler did not really need to resort to force to do this. He wasn't Stalin. the people just worshipped him.
This literally sounds just like that CNN correspondent who said that the invasion of Ukraine was uniquely disturbing because it was happening in Europe. I just want to know what makes it uniquely disturbing when we know that all people want to live and do not want to be conquered in such a way and overpowered in such a way. And those same industrialized nations that this happened amongst were doing those same things to people in their colonies. I always get really confused when people talk about how the world stood by and watched as Nazis systematically eradicated Jewish people, but that was what was being done to people in the colonies of those same superpowers that people are shocked never intervened. Why would they intervene? They were doing that to black and brown people in those faraway lands you just mentioned. Those same educated Germans who suddenly turned into monsters that worshipped Hitler had spent years and years and years reading publications that were talking about how systematically the Nama and Hera people were being exterminated and how that was a good thing for Germany. This is how they talked about indigenous people that they had pushed into the deserts to make them starve and die of thirst. They said, like a wounded beast, the enemy was tracked down from one waterhole to the next until he finally became a victim of his own environment. The arid Omaheke Desert was to complete what the German army had begun, the extermination of the Herero nation.
I actually agree with their overarching point, which is that we tend to teach history in a very linear way. We focus on single events as opposed to teaching history more thematically, and how much more unifying it would be to learn genocide as a theme as opposed to just one-off individual horrible events.
And I agree with you. Let's talk about the themes, which is why I bring up the genocide of the Herero and Nama people by the same people who engineered the Holocaust, or at least who were inspired by those tactics that were used. Unfortunately, this part of your video really did a lot of disservice to your argument and really fell into the trap of Europe is the heart of enlightenment, so atrocities committed there are going to sting more and be more visceral than atrocities committed in the heart of darkness, aka Africa and other colonies in the non-Western world. These acts were done by the same people, but it's the victims that were different. That is what we're calling attention to. Because while yes, the Nazis did not consider Jewish people at the time to be white, they were still European, and that is at the heart of why, in retrospect, the Holocaust is given a level of reverence that other genocides are not, and you actually just agreed with us by making those statements in this part of your video. And this conversation isn't just being had with the Holocaust, it's also being had with the plight of Palestinians right now, where people are recognizing that the reason why Palestine is getting so much more attention is because the victims are not black, whereas the victims of the genocide in Sudan, Congo, Tigray, etc. are black, and that's why those aren't getting as much attention. So it's just a matter of really seeing things for what they are and calling them out as we fight for the liberation of everybody.
So this is all I got from the stitches, and anybody that is telling you that you did not do anything wrong doesn't even like you because you already went overboard. And I am glad that you kept, because he actually put up an apology which did not go well. Like a lot of people were bashing him over the apology, and then he made another apology. Now let me tell you something. If people have to like bash you or tell you that this is not a good apology for you to make another apology, it means you are not ready. It's probably not from the bottom of your heart, or you are forcing it because you needed to do this apology. But I love the fact that he pointed so many things out because he was being anti-black and the rest of it. And knowing fully well that all Holocaust or whatever that happened to everybody happened to them in different ways, and they are not a nice thing. It was a very horrific thing, right? And then undermining slavery because to you it was nothing, it was not worth it, or it's just something that happened, or it's not, I mean, excuse me, it's just something that happened to them and the rest of it. And now that is one of the reasons why they underplay or undermine Black people's experience, especially each time they talk about slavery. And this young man is the man that has always been speaking up for Black people and always, like, speaking up for Black people. And all. That's why I keep saying that I don't like it when people speak up for Black people. All these allies and all that, it does not work and all that. He really messed up big time. And I am glad that he came back to say that he knew that he messed up. If only like he is saying it from the bottom of his heart, but I don't care. But I am sure that he already knew that he messed up because people were not finding that funny. A lot of people reacted to it and all that. And then the fact that so many people don't listen to Black women and all that is just something that but I love the fact that Breezy mentioned that the next time when Black women are saying something, you all better listen, because they've been screaming some certain things and all that. You all will always turn a deaf ear because some certain things are not affecting you, or you don't probably not your experience. I know it's not your experience, but then you don't undermine people's experience and all that. Holocaust was, according to him, Holocaust was the most like a horrible thing that happened. Like, are you really for real? Are you for real? So what are you telling me, that there is a genocide that is better than the other genocide, or like that one is the only one you choose to recognize because you are this? And that is one of the reasons why I have been saying it. I don't believe in allies. So a lot of people are still in the comment section. You know, one thing with some pop colored people is that you will always find people that will come out to say some crazy things and all that. I mean, you don't have to apologize. People of color expect nothing from, you don't have to apologize. It's not problem. But then when you see when a Black person or a person of color is apologizing, you definitely will know. And that is it. Some people were like, you don't have to apologize because people of color or Black people do not expect nothing from a piece of red disease like you and all that. And it shows that, let me tell us something. I love it when they sleep, because sometimes when they sleep, they come back to tell you that they are humans. I understand that we are all humans and sometimes we can sleep. But when you are really being genuine, trust me, it's very hard. Like, you don't sleep. Just to tell you that some of them that are actually supporting us are not supporting Black people with their full heart or with their full chest or something. I have really seen some of them being for, like, they are for Black people, but something will happen. Then you find out that these people, it's not coming from their heart, from heart of heart. It's not coming from their heart of heart. So that's all I have to say. See you all in my next video. Bye for now.